Hi, and welcome to the Left-Handed Bandit mobile paint party experience. Today's theme is going to be Lady in a Hat. So we're going to do a lady in a hat. So let's go over just some basic materials that we're going to need. We're going to need a couple of paint brushes. You can use a regular size paintbrush like I have, different widths, different lengths, as long as it's smaller than your second brush. And today my second brush is going to be a sponge brush. And these two brushes should be included in your kit or something very, very closely. So one small brush, one larger brush. You could benefit from a cup of water. You could benefit from a paper towel. Your kit comes with a pre-plotted easel. A pre-plotted canvas, I should say. Easels are separate. As well as a few colors that we're going to need. We're going to need blue paint. We're going to need red paint. We're going to need yellow paint, black paint, and white paint. All you need is about the size of a quarter, nothing more. It won't take much paint to fill this image in. In fact, a lot of people get intimidated when I do this image with them at different paint parties because it looks so hard to do, but really this is a very simple, quick and easy painting. The hardest part about the painting is simply going to be making the right skin tone, which we'll focus on in just a bit. So now that we got our supplies introduced, we're going to go ahead and get started by jumping right into the painting. I am going to be starting off with my smaller size paintbrush. So this is the one that I'm using today. This is a angled brush, very mid to small size. They could come in different widths, different lengths. This one is about the average width and length, and I can switch that up to a smaller one as well, but this is going to be what I'm going to be starting off with. With this paintbrush, I'm going to go ahead and dip it in my water. I'm not going to bang my paintbrush to the bottom of the cup, but I'm going to bang it lightly, or I should say skim it lightly at the bottom of the cup. Tap it on both sides of your cup, get that excess water out, and I want you to dab both sides of your paintbrush off on your paper towel each and every time you clean your brush. So we're swooshing, we're tapping, and we're dabbing. All right, so jumping into the painting, I want to go ahead and make a skin tone for the woman first. And we can jump from here to the other parts later. But the skin tone, as I mentioned, is the hardest part. And we want to mix up the right skin tone. So the three main colors that we're going to need when finding a skin tone to start with is always going to be some of these primary colors, this red, this yellow, and this blue right over here. So we can always start with a base skin tone layer by mixing that yellow, red, and blue together and making brown, and then adding either white, more yellow, or black from there. But to keep this simple, we are going to mix these colors into a brown color, and we'll add the black if we want to go darker, and we'll add the white if we want to go lighter. So I'm going to do both of those right now. So the fortunate part about these mobile paint party experiences and these pre-recorded videos, it allows you to rewind the video if you need clarification, or you can pause the video if you need a second just to mix up your paint. But in just a few seconds, I'm going to go ahead and mix up a darker skin tone as well as a lighter skin tone, and I'll even add a very high yellow skin tone, or almost more Caucasian skin tone, for the purposes of whoever's watching this video. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up my red and my yellow first by making orange. So the first step in this, and we're going to start with just that basic brown. We're going to add a glop of yellow to somewhere clean on your palette. And then I'm not even going to rinse my brush off. I'm going to go in and grab just a small bit of red paint, and I'm going to mix those together, and we're looking to make orange. And it's already given us orange right here. And we're going to make sure we mix up enough because for me, I'm going to need to show you a few different skin tones, so I'm going to add more. For you, you only need to mix up about the size of a quarter. If you have a size of a quarter on your end, then that's going to be just fine for the sake of this painting. But you can either fast forward if you want to jump right into the painting, or you can just hang out for a second and figure out how to go about making these skin tones. So after orange, I want to go ahead and add just a touch of blue. I don't need too much blue, just a little bit at a time. And when we add that blue in, our painting is going to start getting darker. It'll start getting a lot darker. It's starting to turn to a light caramel brown on us, but we want to go a little bit deeper to get a basic brown so that we can have a nice starting point for mixing these other colors. And I'm getting a nice solid brown. Just gonna make sure I got it all mixed in. And now that I got this solid brown, now I got a nice solid brown, I want to either decide to go lighter or darker. So if this is the skin tone that you want to stick with for your painting, then you can stick with that and stop here, fast forward, and go into the painting. However, if you want a lighter skin tone, take some of that brown that you just mixed up, find a clean area on your palette, and I'm going to go ahead and add a scoop of white to that. And that is going to lighten my brown into more of a lighter brown skin peanut butter. So that's how we get a lighter brown. Now, if you want to go lighter than that, you mix up more white. I'm not going to show that on this video, but if you want to go lighter than that, add more white to that. However, going back to that brown, if I want to go darker, all I have to do is grab a bit of that brown, add it to a clean area on your palette, and then add, and I can't stress this enough, just a very teeny amount of black. All you need is just a little bit. If you add too much, it's going to go too dark, too fast. You won't be able to bring it back. You're going to be wasting paint at that point. So add just a little bit of black, and now it's getting real dark. So for the sake of this video, adding black just a little bit at a time to your brown is going to take you darker, and adding white to your brown is going to take you lighter. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to stick with just that first brown that I mixed up. So I'm using my first brown for my painting, but you can use whatever color you like at this point. And we're going to speed up this painting just a little bit since we got our colors mixed in. I want you to go ahead, take this brush you're using, rinse it off in water, get it nice and clean, nice and clean. Even if you already have the same color brown, get that paintbrush nice and clean by swishing it around in your water. I'm going to tap it on the side of my cup, dab both sides off on my paper towel. And from here, I'm going to choose my skin tone, and I'm going to go ahead and start with the head. And I'm going to go ahead and work under the hat, on the face, around the mouth, and fill in this canvas with this skin tone in the face first. Get a nice, solid area. Nice, solid layer of paint. No globs of paint. If you have globs, that is going to slow us down. So no globs. I'm going to smooth those paint strokes out. If you get a little in the hat or a little in the lips, it's not a big deal. We can always adjust later. But we're going to go right up to the shape of that mouth and all around. Okay. Now I can still see through my canvas background some of those markings I have, but that's okay. I can adjust that in just a second. So once I have my head nice and fully filled in with a nice flat layer of paint, no white spaces showing underneath, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the ears with that brown paint as well. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and jump from the ears and fill in my shoulders with the brown paint. Now, if I'm going fast, it's okay to pause the video and finish each part piece by piece, and pause and go as you like. However, I'll do my best to repeat the step a couple of times, but again, the convenience of this interactive, not so interactive painting is to have the convenience of pausing and rewinding the video. And this is mainly due this whole process because of COVID, of course, and everything is all digital now. So usually when I'm teaching parties, I'm still kind of running the same format, but things are different now, temporarily, I hope. So back to the paint. I'm going to fill in my shoulders, and I got a nice smooth layer of paint. And once I have that nice smooth layer of paint in my shoulders, I'm going to move into the neck and the cleavage area. I'm going to go ahead and fill those in as well. Again, nice smooth layer of brown paint. My paintbrush is a little tough on me tonight. a little stiff, so it's taking me just a little bit longer, but if you have a stiff paintbrush, feel free to dip it in water like I'm about to do in a second and get it nice and clean, and hopefully that water will free up those bristles just a little bit, but it just makes it a lot easier when we can glide across the canvas versus struggling across it like my brush is doing right now. But regardless, stiff brush or not, make sure you have a nice, solid, smooth layer of paint with no white showing underneath. And that's what I have right now. And it's already starting to come together and look unique. So I want to go ahead and add some detail to this skin to bring it to life. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paintbrush. I'm going to wipe the excess off on my paper towel. So I am not dipping it in water right now. I'm simply wiping the excess paint off of my paintbrush onto my paper towel. I'm not dipping it in water, as mentioned. And once I wipe that excess off, I'm going to go ahead and go back into my white paint. And I'm going to grab just a touch of it. And I'm going to highlight areas on my painting in the skin tone only that I think if this woman on my canvas were real, what would pop out? What would extend out? Let's make some 3D effects. So first thing we're going to do is cleavage area, of course. That is going to pop out a little bit. So I'm taking some white paint and just lightly dabbing on to those three-dimensional areas. So cleavage area. And then I can go in, grab just a very small touch of paint at a time. Hit the neck area. Just a little bit of neck. Not a lot. After I hit this neck area, I'm jumping down to the shoulders. Doesn't matter which shoulder you start with, but I'm just using just a touch of paint to mark areas that I think will pop out. So the shoulders are a bit more three-dimensional. Those will pop out a little bit. I'm lightly dabbing, and I'm holding my paintbrush right in the middle, lightly dabbing to make those details. So I'm going to be doing that throughout this entire skin area, on the neck, on the shoulders, on the cleavage, on the face. While this paint is still wet, we are using acrylic paint. Acrylic paint dries fast, usually within 3 to 5 minutes. So we want to still blend these while it's fairly wet. However, if you're noticing that your acrylic paint is drying, it's no big deal. It's not the end of the world. Just take, after you mark those three-dimensional areas, again, my cleavage, my neck, my shoulders, my chin, my cheeks on my figure and my canvas, parts of my ears, maybe somewhere on the ear, only if you want to, then I'm marking the places that we're going to add a little bit of brown to. So after I've added the white, go back into your brown. Go back into your brown, add some more brown, just a touch, just a very, very tiny touch at a time. If you use too much, this won't work. However, if you're noticing that you're not really liking the way yours is coming out, feel free then to go ahead and just keep your canvas nice and solid. However, if you don't want to keep your canvas solid, you can add these details, but again, you don't have to go to this length if you don't want to. If you like a nice solid layer of skin, then you can go ahead and revert right back to that by adding that original brown color or that skin tone that you decide to use. So I'm just going to go ahead and rinse off my paintbrush. Right. Brush took a little bit more time to get clean than I thought, so now we have it nice and clean. And since it's nice and clean, we're going to go ahead and go with a color switch, and we're going to jump to the lips. So if you still do make adjustments to your face and your skin tone, feel free to make those adjustments now. Pause the video for a second, make those adjustments, start it up again in a few when you're ready to go with the next part. However, if you are ready now with the skin tone, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the color red. I'm still using this same paintbrush, and I'm going to switch to red paint with this paintbrush and grab just a touch of red. and I'm filling in my lips with a nice solid layer of paint. So, nice solid layer of paint on my lips. It's a nice red we got going here. And now it's nice and filled in solid. Next, I'm going to go ahead and make a few marks on my shirt. Now, I'm using the color red for this. However, if you don't want the clothing to be this color, you don't have to. But the red I'm using is going to differ a little bit from my lips. And we'll go back to the lips and add some details in a second. But what we're going to do is add just a touch of black to our red paint. And we're going to mix up a bit of a burgundy paint by adding just a touch of black. And this is the color that I'm going to add into my lips in a few. But before I add it to my lips, I'm going to go ahead and fill in my shirt on my woman this color, because I want the red on her shirt to contrast well against the red on her lips. So I got my nice burgundy color all mixed in, and I'm going to work on the shirt only, putting a nice solid layer of paint in. Or you can leave some gaps and add some other colors in there, which I'll do just to show you some examples. So you can see, which I'm not kind of differing from when I did the skin, I'm leaving some gaps open on the actual shirt. And those gaps are going to allow me to come back in just a second and maybe add some touches of white or another color. And that's going to allow me to have some mixes and some blends in my figure's clothing. So I'm wiping the excess paint off of my paintbrush onto a paper towel, and I'm switching to just a touch of white paint, and I'm going to just dab in, kind of the same way I did with my skin tone. Some white paint in these different areas of this maroon, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to mix that paint by lightly whisking the canvas. Light wisp. You can do a solid color if you want. You don't have to do these details if you don't like. You can rewind the video. Again, I'm leaving open areas on my canvas, and instead of filling those in, I'm just going back and adding just a little bit of white. And then after I got my white in, I'm going to go ahead and blend those colors together while they are still wet. And once they're blended in, I got a new color. I got a new effect going on my garments of my figure. Losing my easel a little bit here, so I'm just going to hold it so you can see better. So I got my clothing filled in with a nice blend of deep maroons and violets from the paint mixing together. So I got her clothing filled in. Next, I'm going to go ahead and go back to those lips. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse my paintbrush off in water. Get it nice and clean. So after you get it nice and clean, you're going to tap it on the side of your cup, dab both sides off on your paper towel, and then you're going to switch back to that original red. So I'm switching to my original red, and I'm going to add just a touch more red to the lips. And now that I got a bit of red on the lips, I'm going to wipe the excess off of my paper towel, grab a touch of white paint, and add a little bit of white paint to your lips. And again, if you don't want to do this, you can keep your lips a nice solid color, but I'm adding just a little bit of white. It's mixing in with the wet paint on the lips, and it's going to cause a little bit of a glow and a detail, a bit more detail. So now I got that filled in. Next, I want to focus on my hat. So for this next step, you're going to rinse your paintbrush off in your water. I'm going to tap both sides on the side of my cup, dab both sides off on my paper towel, and I'm going to look at my black and white paint, and I'm going to mix just a touch of white paint to some black paint so that I can mix up some gray paint. So I'm mixing up gray paint right now, and if you need to mix up more paint, then feel free to mix up more paint. I'm actually going to grab just a touch more white myself, mix it in there because I'm running out. So with my gray paint, I'm going to go ahead and have a nut, make sure I mix up a nut, that is, so that I can fill in this hat. We're going to make our entire hat the color gray. We're going to start with the part of the brim on the front and go ahead and start filling that in. I'm going just a little bit faster because I have just a bit more practice. And I already know the effect that I'm going for, but take your time if you need to. Start with the front of that. Feel free to leave some empty spaces here and there that we can go back in and fill in with some other colors. So I'm leaving some open areas in my front brim of this hat. And then feel free to mix up more gray paint if you need to. My words and my vocabulary is all over today. Mix up more paint if you need to. And then you're going to go to the other section right here on the left, her right. Add a little bit of that darker gray paint in here. I'm going to go on the right, do the same thing. Add some down at the right or wherever you like, really. And I left open areas at all three parts of my brim. And I'm going to do the same with the top of my canvas, the top of my hat, that is. And I'm going to go on the top of the hat, add just a few areas of gray paint. I'm just mixing up more as I go. Don't need too much. And now that I have those open areas in my hat, with the remaining space that's left in the hat, I'm going to go piece by piece, front brim, side brim, the back of the brim, top of the hat. I'm going to mix in some white, and it's going to add a value. Now, if you want to switch your colors up and add different colors and make your own effect, I encourage you to do so. This is the time where you want to start getting real creative with your painting. This has been a very straightforward, rigid painting so far. It just looks funky and fun when it's done, but it's the bells and whistles after all this that are going to really give us that neat effect. So I'm going ahead and I'm filling in some white paint to the front brim, the front of the hat, and that gray that I put on earlier is already dry, so that white paint just kind of laid right on top of it. So I'm adding back in some more gray so that as I'm mixing in this white, then it has something to attach and bond with, and it's going to make a nice smooth blend. Things only blend well while the paint is still wet and able to still bond with it. So I got a nice blend of that gray and that light gray going. I went outside the hat a little bit, but that's okay. It's not the end of the world. And we're going to mix lightly until you have an effect that you like. I'm kind of digging that. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to the sides of the hat where we had some gray paint, which already dried up. This paint is drying phenomenally fast today. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to add a little bit of gray. I'm going to add a little bit of white. It's going to mix in, make different colors. Make sure I got no gaps as I'm adding in this blend of colors. This paint is drying extraordinarily fast today. Yours may be drying a little bit slower, so excuse me if I'm moving fast because my paint is kind of forcing me to right now. So I'm doing the exact same thing in this last section of the hat, which is around the back and side brim, lapel. I don't even know what word to use for this. This is a woman's hat. But as long as you're blending colors together, then we're looking at the right thing. However, if you decided to keep your hat a solid color, no shade, it's all good. I'm sure it's going to look awesome. You can be as creative as you like. Usually the people who are more experienced with the art are the ones who are looking to kind of take things into a tangent, which is great. I like it. I encourage you to do so. So when I say these steps, they're not just for newcomers and new painters, but also for someone who is very, very familiar with how to use, a paintbrush and who's familiar with art and, different techniques in art. I want to cater to everybody. So I'm taking the top of that hat and I'm filling in the last couple of details to the insides of the hat. I'm going to be getting ready to move to my hair in just a few. So, and just a little bit more dark gray because I know I'm starting to dry up over here. And filling that in all the way. I don't want any gaps of paint from the background of the canvas. And fill that in nice and smooth. Play around with my paintbrush, play around with turning around your paintbrush. It's going to give you different effects, different angles. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to rinse our paintbrush off. We are going to get it nice and clean. Tap it on the side of our cup, dab both sides off on our paper towel. And we're going to go ahead and fill in our hair. Now, again, I encourage you to be as creative as you like. You don't have to do your hair the same color I'm getting ready to do mine, which is going to be a blackish, brownish color. You can fill your hair with highlights of blue, highlights of pink, highlighter color that everyone always wears these days. Any type of color that you want to add to this, feel free to add to the hair. Be as creative as you like. Add some curls and some waves in there. I'm going to stick with the basic brownish, blackish color and add a couple of wave details to give you some ideas. So my painting is going to go a little bit fast as I'm filling in these details to my hair. However, feel free to pause the video if you'd like. Feel free to fast forward the video to see the outcome, to know if you want to go ahead and stick with what I'm doing. However, I'm going ahead and I'm filling in my hair and I'm following the shape of the hair as I'm filling it in. Notice that I'm kind of waving my paintbrush, leaving some open areas in the background because I'm going to go ahead and go back in with some white in just a second and blend that together. So I got most of that black. I usually do bounce to the other side. However, with this paint drying so fast today, I'm afraid to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and wave this all together with some white paint. It's going to mix in and make some grays. You can add some browns if you like, or some reds, or whatever color you like to this at this point. I'm going to add a little bit of red actually, since it's right there. This is the same maroonish red that I used in my my figure shirt, in her shirt. So she's just matching to the T. And it's not a lot of red in the hair, which doesn't make it too distracting or blend in with her shirt, which was a complete exact accident. So, got my hair on that side filled in. I'm just going to simply do the same thing to the right side. You know, same thing you did on one side, do it again on the other. You know, I'm going to add these wave patterns, these wave effects. You know, I'm going to leave some spaces open. I'm going to follow the shape of the hair. And as I'm following the shape of the hair, I'm leaving this couple open areas so I can come back in a second. I'm going to go back in. I'm wiping the excess paint off my paintbrush and onto my paper towel, going back in. Going to touch some white throughout these different areas, mix that in. See how that starts looking for me. Feel free to get more paint if you like. Your kit should have enough paint to guide you through this. If you are running out of paint, then you may be using too much paint. So the key to blending these colors, and the cool thing about blending these colors, is it allows us to stretch our paint more. So again, if you're running out of paint, you may be using a little bit too much paint. So this is enough to get us through one painting. It's actually a overly generous amount. So sorry if you're running out of paint. You may have to go find some more and pause this video for a sec. But I'm going ahead and I'm filling this all in. Add just a couple of those maroonish highlights in there as well. It's real fast. I don't need a lot, just need a couple. I don't want it to be too noticeable. All right. Now, I'm going to rinse off my paintbrush. I'm going to do one final thing. I'm going to go ahead and fill in my background. And we can fill in our background with any color that we like at this point. The hat is drying, the hair is drying, the clothing should be pretty dry, the skin should be pretty dry. At this point in the painting, you can kind of go back before you do this background color and make your touch-ups as you see fit. However, I'm going to do the background. I'm going to give my painting a 10-minute break. I'm going to come back and add the outlines, and that'll be in the painting, and I'm going to add a couple of details in there as well. But again, whatever color you like to make to your background, whatever colors that you actually have left, feel free to do whatever you like. I'm going to go ahead and fill my background in with the color pink. I'm going to go ahead and mix together the colors pink and I'm going to keep my white white. So I'm going to get rid of this paintbrush, and I'm going to switch to my sponge brush, and I'm going to take just a touch of red, find a clean area on my plate, and mix that with some white. It's going to give me a bit of a faded pink, but I'm going to add a little bit more red, give me a closer to a hotter pink. I'm going to take this hotter pink, I'm going to add it to my canvas. I'm going to choose random areas on my canvas. Maybe come along down over here on her hat. It's a random glob. And I'm using that actual sponge brush. If you don't want to use the sponge brush, you can use the other paintbrush that came with it, the smaller brush. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to go ahead and fill in a lot of pink over here, actually. Get a nice amount filled in there. You can get the whole thing pink if you like, or you can just leave some spaces. We can come back in a second and add some other color, but I'm going to go ahead and fill in the whole thing with pink. So mix more, grab more if you need it, but you don't have to use pink. You can use whatever color you like. I'm simply using pink and showing you some blending techniques. I'm going to grab a little bit more. I'm going to come on this right side. I'm going to work this way from the right side, curve it upward, follow the shape of the body. I got a little bit in her clothing, but it's okay. I can always adjust it later. Add some over here. On the other side of her body, I'm going to stop it right here about the hat. I think the rest should be a whitish blend or a pinkish blend. And I'm going to wipe the excess off my paintbrush onto my paper towel. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in some white paint to meet that pink. So again, I wiped the excess paint off my paintbrush onto my paper towel. I went back in, I got some white, I brought it right to the canvas, and I started mixing it in with the pink that I just recently added to the canvas. This is our last step before we give our canvases a break. The very last step. And then we're gonna come back for part 2 of this video, which you should have a link to, or hopefully you can find the link to in my videos. And we can finish it off with some basic line work, and our painting's all done. Masterpieces are achievable in just an hour during these mobile paint party experiences. But again, if you're going to take some more time, it might take you longer than an hour, and that's fine. The more time you put into your painting, the more value your painting has. So I just have this one final area over here on this portion of the canvas where I'm going to go ahead and fill that on in. Coming as close to the figure as I can without going into the figure. I'm just blending that all in. Getting the edges of my canvas. I'm going to leave it just like that for a while. And when I come back, I can add some more line work, some more details, and our paintings will be all finished. So we're just over 30 minutes in, and I'll see you for part 2 where we're finishing this off and bringing this even more to life.